So I believe it should be live now. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Let me know if the sound is all right. How's everybody doing? Hello, YouTube. See some familiar names and faces. I think you guys can probably hear me. I'm using a new computer, so let me know. Let me know if it's working. So yeah, for those who don't know who I am, my name's Jake. Um, I used to for a few years I made content starting back in 2019 to 2022 or 2023, maybe part of 2023. Um, and um, so I'm making videos about a year and a half ago or so. I think I've maybe made one or two in the last year, but felt like coming back today to make a video. I've been doing, I buy and sell Pokemon cards full time as a job, and have been doing that now for about it's been about a year plus, year and a half. Before that, I speculated on cards. I collected largely, um, and I collected for maybe it's probably 6 years before that. So I've been doing this. I don't know, 8 9 years, something like that. Hard to keep track of time. Um, um, and so I feel like, in the past I've said a lot of what I wanted to say on YouTube. People have asked me why I stopped making videos, and um, I can definitely talk about that and go into that a little bit today. But I also want to just like get into the current state of the Pokemon market, answer people's questions, what they're thinking about these days, um, and go from there. So uh, as some people who have my content is probably going to be different than most of the content that you watch on YouTube around Pokemon. From what I've been watching this morning, I've been watching some other people's videos, and sort of the biggest videos that are getting the most views in sort of the investing in Pokemon space. And I definitely have some different ideas and different takes on the market that are not often shared, I think, on social media and YouTube for a variety of reasons. Um, uh, People don't love to hear sort of the reality checks from people like me who tell people that investing in collectibles is not you're not really investing, and what most people are doing in this space is not what I would deem investing, and more speculating, kind of short-term gambling. And that can seem odd from a guy who buys and sells cards full time for a living. And most of the people who are making videos on YouTube, I'm probably own way more cards and have sold hundreds or thousands of times the amount of cards that they've sold, over the last few years. And so I have much more of a financial stake in, and this will go to the first reason why I stopped making videos is I get tired of talking against my own interests, my own financial interests, the narratives that have been spun and are continued to be spun online that drives the hype forward and prices up, and the narratives and echo chamber that YouTube and social media is that drives the prices up is really good for my business in the short run. And it's really good for driving interest and demand. And it's even good for the speculations that I do, the short-term flips, the short-term speculations, the short-term holds, buying new popular sets at release, selling them 6 months to a year later at 2 to 3 times to 4 times the value. Now, I don't call that stuff investing. I call that taking advantage of narratives and short-term sort of hype and interest in that set, taking advantage of its current relevancy. Um, One joke that used to be said on this channel is that every set is the best set, right? Every new modern era is the best era. Every new chase card is the best chase card. And there's some funny truth to this, or it's like the worst or a dud, right? During these sort of intense swinging times, and everyone's trying to make money, and it's so easy to make money, and well, what is there left to buy? This stuff has gone up. Well, where I don't want to not put my money into Pokemon because Pokemon continues to go up and it all goes up. So where do I need to put it next? What do I have to look for next to make my money next? Um, and um, these are all classic signs of bubbles that are created where very predictable human behavior patterns that we have seen over and over in the Pokemon card world, but way beyond that in all asset classes. And frankly, we've seen bubbles in every asset class over the last 4 to 5 years. Lots of bubbles. One video I did on Patreon um, this couple months ago was comparing all the different asset classes and how they've performed. Um, I think I took like 20 different kind of traditional investment classes and alternative investment classes and compared them. And Pokemon was somewhere in the middle in terms of performance, with crypto being at the top, and the housing market, average real estate home prices being sort of towards the bottom. So first thing I want to say about bubbles, and because I haven't made videos like this in a long time, is that bubbles do not mean that the underlying asset or collectible or thing does not have some value to people. And generally, the first rule of bubbles usually is that bubbles happen to things that people really like and where there's a sort of natural spark and a natural sort of interest and engagement, or or there's a sort of natural, like, people think that there's a well, that usually comes second, followed usually by, like, okay, this thing is really cool and there's an opportunity here to kind of make money and build a market around this thing that people really love. um, um, hey, Joe. Hey, Omni. It's really good to hear from you. That's a name from the. I just looked at chat for 1 second. I haven't seen Omni Poke in years. I know, seriously, Joe. I'm probably not gonna like be back making videos, but definitely making one video that I'm sure will receive quite a bit of hate and negativity as usual. So the reasons I stopped making these videos is because I was either preaching to the crowd, preaching to the choir. Excuse me, that's the saying. Of people who tend to agree with me, or I was getting frustration and negativity back, uh, um, and frankly, as I was saying before, and I'll use one of the terms I used to use a lot, the irrational exuberance. Um, uh, was beneficial to me and continues to be beneficial to me and my business. And so it feels weird coming on to YouTube and talking to a lot of random strangers online and giving them advice or trying to help them, think critically or have a critical conversation about sort of what's really going on, when I'm being attacked or their negative sort of responses, or people telling me I'm the GOAT and the greatest ever. And, obviously I like appreciate the sort of those responses over the negative responses, but just sort of neither of those things are particularly useful to pushing the conversation ahead. And me being quiet and silently making money from behind, I have made more money this year more easily in the last 2 years than I have ever in my entire life. And that includes when I was like investing and speculating before the 2020 boom. And I haven't been doing that by investing in Pokemon cards. I've been doing that by flipping and reselling Pokemon cards in a hot, intense market. Um, so I want to go over. I'm talking all over the place. Welcome back to YouTube, Jake. I want to go over a couple of concepts and points. Um, One I talked about that all bubbles start with some basis in reality, some value. Often when people online, I think they say that we're in a bubble. Some people I think hear like, "Oh, you're saying that I don't like this or that everything's just driven by money or evil investor speculators." No, that's not what people are saying. People and people are not saying that that all the interest is bubble interest. Okay? That everyone buying the cards at certain prices and every card right now that people are buying at certain prices, they won't continue to buy into the future at these prices and higher prices. Okay? So often, and including myself, when I say we're in a bubble of sorts, what do we really mean? But what do I really mean by that? I'm not really defining that. And people can hear it all sorts of different ways and take offense because it's like, well, you're saying, well, this isn't in a bubble. This is cheap or it should be worth a lot more, et cetera, et cetera, right? Um, so a bubble. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done YouTube. I'm definitely not used to. It's definitely a skill that requires practice. Um, all right, so once a bubble starts, and bubbles again are defined psychologically. It doesn't matter what the prices are. The prices do not matter in a bubble. Okay, and what matters is the psychology of the people in the market. Looking at people's psychology. Okay, are people buying items and things out of the trying to keep up with their neighbor, the automatic guarantees of making money, the sure things, it will go on forever. These types of energies pushing prices up. People, one thing I saw a lot on YouTube videos I was watching this morning to kind of prepare for this, just to see what people were talking about. Um, okay, well, these things have gone up, of course, but what's next? Right? It's those types of conversations, those types of feelings, right? And then people like me who I believe are more sort of grounded in what in the psychology of you know markets in general, and what markets do and what markets look like, um, see are silenced and criticized and um, mischaracterized, and all of that type of stuff is part of. And I'm not saying, oh, woe is me. I'm a random person online. It doesn't matter. But using that sort of those reactions, right, as a tool to sort of gauge where the overall market is important. What is the content? How much of the content is optimistic? How much of the content is telling people to invest? How sure is all of this content that you're watching, right? The people who aren't so sure, are they really sharing their opinions as boldly as the people who are very sure, right? All of these types of things. Um, let's see. Um, let's see what else. So, again, narratives take traction, right? Narratives in 2020, vintage, cards, they're going to disappear. There are so few of these. These are our childhood. The nostalgia's crazy. They're going to go forever. Um, Narratives around evolutions, and hidden fates being the greatest two sets of all time, taking root. Those cards and sets and box prices going to the moon. Narratives about Sword and Shield. Narratives about, right, one narrative to sort of the next. Now, which of these narratives are going to stand the test of time, which are not, nobody knows, right? But that's not what people are telling you, right? I'm not able to sit here and predict the demand or predict the narrative, right? In the short term, if you're very engaged in the market, you can feel the demand moving or shifting before other people, and you can try and take advantage of that. So I think a lot of what people are doing who are making money, who are actually making money in this space, they may call what they're doing investing, but I would actually call what they're doing more short term kind of day trading, flipping in a hot, engaged market. It's very risky to do that, but I do that, right? We're all doing that to some extent. Now, I try and buy quite a bit below market and sell at market to de-risk that, but there's also an element of like, I am prioritizing this set over that set and getting more of this over that because I think it's going to do better. I think it's going to sell better, right? That's trying to predict what narratives are going to be created and where that demand is going to be. And the power of social media and the echo chamber and the narratives. Narratives used to get created by uh, the mainstream media. Right now, narratives can be created by so many different places, and we're so inundated by it, and it's from people who seem more genuine, seem more on our side. This is a guy who's on your side on the other end of the camera. All this type of stuff. Um, so after sort of this narrative phase takes hold, which is sort of like, what are the things that are good to invest in, right? You're going to see these YouTube videos. What should I invest in? What's the most investable thing? And it's the all those videos are not going to be about fundamentals of it, of what an item is, of how maybe there'll be a little bit in terms of the rarity of the item, or this or that, or the important historicalness of an item, or the importance of that item to the hobby, right? That's the stuff that is objective, that are the fundamentals of the item. No, it'll be more about what's the price history, and oh well, the price has gone down quite a bit, so it's probably going to go back up, or the price has doubled, so it's probably going to double again. All the videos I watched this morning used that type of logic, whether they were aware of it or not. And everyone in the comment section, instead of saying, "Hey, like, well, it's just gone up 100%. Why do you think it's going to go up another 100%?" Or it's just gone down 50%. Why do you think it's not going to go down another 50%? Instead, it's sort of, yes, like that irrational exuberance or irrational optimism of, yes, like it is going to double again because price doubled already, or it is going to rebound. Or when people are looking to the next thing that's going to go up, well, it's like, oh, this went up, so that's going to go up, right? These types of things. Now, some of that can be grounded in fundamentals, where you're looking at, well, this item over here, it seems undervalued to this item because this item, I saw a video this morning with people talking about, XY full arts, and talking about like some of the gold bordered full arts, like the Alakazam that has Alakazam, Lugia, and Umbreon on it. And him saying, well, this card has three of the most popular Pokemon in the hobby, you know, well, at least two of the most popular, with Alakazam being a pretty popular one. Um, it was a set that was printed probably a lot less. It's a set that has been opened a lot more, so more of it is already out, and it's a set that people aren't talking about. And as soon as people start talking about it, right, as soon as people start creating a narrative around those cards, they're going to jump up in price, because the art and the Pokemon on it and the rarity, right, all those things are fundamental to the card, right? Those things, once people come and notice those things and a narrative is started around it, that card is undervalued relative to these other things. So that's a good analysis, right, of like why this card should be more valuable than those cards. That analysis is built on some objective fundamentals, but there's something missing, which is what's driving the prices on anything right now. Is it that sort of analysis? I mean, maybe some things are kind of creeping up, based on that. But a lot of the price hype and a lot of the energy is on the high flyers, the flip cards I'm going to make a lot of money on, the cards that have the most attention, and one sign of a bubble, and usually the cards that are in the biggest bubble are the cards that are selling the most and are being talked about the most and are being flipped the most generally. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean as a business, I'm making money off those cards constantly. A lot of my business is geared towards brand new sets and to the hottest cards and buying them below market, grading them, flipping them, reselling them higher. And all this hype and this engagement is really, really good for my business. And I am making a lot of money on all of that. But I want to at least make one video because I haven't in a long time, just trying to say, okay, think about what's happening here. And that doesn't mean that it won't keep happening and that this is a part that will often be missed by people who just want to disagree with me. It doesn't mean that the prices won't double again. That's what happens in bubbles. That's a sign of a bubble. If prices double, triple in a short period of time when nothing has changed, that is a sign of it actually. People who view that as a oh well we weren't in a bubble because the price quadrupled. No. Yeah, right. A bubble was forming. We were clearly in an early stages, or if we weren't then, and maybe we weren't, or whatever, depending on the card, we are now, right? Or when is it that, right? And this is bubble or not a bubble or what stage of a bubble, right? The sophistication in being a good investor is taking advantage of bubbles and understanding the psychology to make money. It's not you don't need to leave the market. Someone saying that aspects of a market are in a bubble does not mean that there isn't value necessarily, and it doesn't mean that everything right is in a bubble, and it doesn't mean that you certainly can create a business that's very profitable and take advantage of it. Now, the other question is, what does the bubble bursting look like, and how much is that going to damage people's businesses here, right? That's the stuff I worry about, of course, as a person who has a business in the space and a person who enjoys and cares. So I was a social worker for 15 years, or 15 years, excuse me. Oh, it was 15 years ago is when I started, but it was for about 11, 12 years. I was a social worker, and I worked with people because I cared about people's well-being and health. Although I'm fairly money focused right now in terms of the Pokemon market and making money, I came from a background of trying to take care of people, of wanting people to be safe, of wanting people to get good, reasonable advice and wisdom and ideas, right? This type of thing, which is why I started the channel and why I made these videos in the first place. Even when it's talking against my own interest, okay? And the reason I say that, like, is so that you will maybe listen to my arguments, okay? Not so you will pity me or like me or any of those things, but maybe it'll get through some of the defense mechanisms and you'll listen and you'll be like, huh, okay, well, it doesn't mean Jake's right, but maybe I should at least listen and not just be caught up in the echo chambers that I'm in and the narratives that I'm in. Give it, and again, it doesn't. No one is right all of the time. No one needs to be listened to like that. But when things get very one sided and very heated and very closed down, it's another sign of the bubble. Um, so in a euphoria phase of a bubble, everyone becomes aware that they can make money. Okay. That's that euphoria phase. It's like money is so easy to make. We all can make it. People become aware. Now, most people who watched this channel back in the day, and probably a lot of people who are here now, because it's probably the people who got the alert for this are probably most of the people who used to watch this back in the day. Um, they were aware. They are the people who were aware that they could make money on this very early. Okay. There are people still filtering in, lots and lots of new people filtering in all the time, like 95% plus. They're not even watching like the investment videos are getting like 20,000 views right now, or like there's a lot of investment channels that are telling people to like buy modern cards and invest in all like these 4 or 5 like new products, and this one's relatively better to that one, right? And all of those videos, probably only 5% of people who are 10, maybe 10%, we don't really know. But my point in saying that is it probably could be a way bigger bubble than it already is. Like prices could probably even go up a lot higher, right, than they are now. There is more demand. I wouldn't say we're necessarily at the end, which is the euphoria phase, where it's like everyone is quitting their jobs to do Pokemon, right? Most of the people who've quit their jobs to do Pokemon, like me, there aren't so many of us yet, although more and more are doing it each year. but a lot of those people were kind of the most hardcore people, the most intense people in the beginning. This is sort of a natural. This is why when you look in like the 80s and the 90s for comic books and then sports cards, very similar things, and those lasted 10 years, 12 years, right? We would be what, 5 years? We'd only be we're not even halfway, through those periods of huge, intense engagement and sort of mania, followed by decade, plus long, um, sort of general lack of interest. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't interest, and it doesn't mean that the cards were still being made and there were still businesses making money in this space, and then followed by the last, 5 to 10 years, relatively, massive, marginal boom period in 2016 to a massive boom period, right? In all of these hobbies. And part of that, and part of why I made that video on Patreon, is to show that there's so much money flowing through the system because of all the printing that was done years ago during the stimulus. And there's so much debt because people are so irrationally exuberant. Everyone in all of these markets, there is so many people investing in debt. And there are lots and lots of people investing in the Pokemon market on debt. And some of the biggest people in the hobby are investing in Pokemon in debt. Okay. Um, but if you want to look at like the real estate market, and you want to look at like stocks, and I mean, people are crypto, people are leveraging themselves up to the hilt because they've made money. They haven't actually cashed that. They haven't actually changed that into dollars, but they have stuff that is worth a certain amount of money. And instead of selling it, they are now feeling like, oh, well, I have all this money. Well, I can take a little bit of debt on, and I do this too. I have and there's some logic to it, right? But it builds that logic where it's like, oh, I'm making so much money and now I have so many assets, so I can, spend 50,000 on Pokemon or 100,000 on Pokemon, when in the past spending 50,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 or 1,000, wherever you're at, that's spending more and more, all of that stuff. So it's hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people experiencing what I'm talking about, the psychology of what I'm talking about that creates this environment. Okay. So when people say price here and then price goes up, so price will be here next, that's not an analysis of the psychology. An analysis of the psychology would be, okay, well, these these things are what moved this market or this card from here to here. This is the likely psychology or the narrative that moved it there. What's the next psychology or narrative that's going to move it higher or lower or whatever? And I'm not saying that there aren't some people having those conversations, but I'm guessing that most of the content and most of the videos are not that way. And I think part of the reason I get quite a bit of hate is because the number of these channels, this is their livelihood, and they don't like people coming online. They don't like me coming online and criticizing, you know, their content or their sort of their arguments, right? And I get that, and I do feel badly. I mean, it's part of why I hate making videos. Frankly, I don't like talking about this stuff. I hate making it. I hate dealing with the negativity. I hate telling people that I don't like what they're doing. Like it's unpleasant all around. Um, it's not fun. Okay, so I think I'm gonna, and then after the euphoria phase comes a crisis phase, and here's the key with the crisis phase is that the insiders, or the people that had been actually creating and crafting the narratives all along, generally have sold by now or are selling into the euphoria phase. So most people here who have made money, like, maybe not yet, maybe it's the next 5 years, maybe the people who are here now telling you how much money they've made are going to be a lot of the ones who've made a lot of money, because this will last for 5 more years or 6 more years or whatever, and they'll be able to take a lot of money out of the hobby. But there is a greater fool. It's the same thing with any market, right? You are buying an item at one price, and then you're looking for someone to pay you more for it. Eventually there will not be that next person. There will not be that greater fool to pay you more. Okay. And if it's not it may not be every card, it may not be the market, as a whole, but these are things that are not should be talked about, you know Frankly, more than the day-to-day sort of price movements, which frankly are totally arbitrary. Like it's the same thing with stocks. And don't get me wrong, this is nothing to do with Pokemon. I mean, the day-to-day movements in the stock markets, right? People, I mean, so much of it too is computerized nowadays that it's it's like it's you'll drive yourself crazy trying to predict short-term movement on things, and and people have built brands around being smart or being knowledgeable or being able to predict the future, and that just feeds more into that. It's like a double whammy. Not only is there sort of that greed psychology, but literally the person you're listening to giving you that advice is feeding in to the fact that you like hearing that advice, and it's just creating that echo chamber up and up and up and up and up. I mean, it's but, if you understand it, you can make a lot of money doing it. The issue is it's a zero-sum game. That money has to come from somewhere. So, you know, the 90% of people that you're in the chat with on those channels, or that you're doing the same thing, like 95% of those people are probably going to lose money to you if you're the one making a lot of money, right? If you're taking out $1 million, or $2 million or $5 million, and by the way, all of these companies, including the Pokemon company first and foremost, and then PSA grading company, the auction houses, all of these companies are taking money constantly out of the hobby, right? Coming from collectors, or I worry, right, investors who believe that what they're doing is actually investing in sort of long-term items that always go up, not understanding what's really happening and looking at short-term price movement that they have created themselves by talking to each other and by pushing that narrative over and over again. Um, and it's you know same thing, different day, right? These are your standard patterns, um human patterns, and we're all subject to it. I'm subject to it too. I have the same feelings that all of you guys have. Like, I want to get involved and make the money. It's 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 just that I try to talk back to those feelings. Um, I want people to like me. I want to have a channel. I want to make money, right? Like, we're all in this together. We're all human beings here, and we all have the same impulses. So being good at playing games is seeing that we have all these impulses. Okay, well, how do I? Because we are all playing. We're playing it against each other, right? This is the other thing about community, right? I was a social worker for 11 years, and I took a very low paycheck to work, act intentionally, because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives who had extremely little support, or had no support systems, or just had a really rough who had a really rough go of it, and just you know um, very unlucky in terms of who they were born to and where they were born in. And frankly, that people can make decisions that are for other people, right? Out of a sort of, I'm trying to help people, I'm trying to do this, I'm talking against my own financial interest. But investing is very cutthroat. Investing is a zero sum game. And it's the same thing when you play board games with your friends, or any sort of game. There are winners and losers, and there can't be winners without losers. And so, uh, I'm not trying to say this like hurt anyone's feelings or to tear people apart. You can compete with people in an ethical, healthy way, and have fun competing. I enjoy competition, but understanding fundamentally what it is. These are not, a lot of these YouTubers are not your friends. They are actively competing with you. They're actively, in many cases, taking advantage of you, taking advantage of your loyalty and your viewership. They're making money off the views. They're making money, off of these things, right? Um, in some cases, they're selling services, you know, that are terrible or good or way overpriced or underpriced. I mean, the market will decide these things, but it's up to everyone here. Like, I have a Patreon, right? If you don't think my advice or my wisdom or my market knowledge or my experience in the Pokemon hobby is worth paying me money, don't. If you don't think it will make you more money or help you or provide you entertainment or content, then don't. Don't pay me because you think I'm your friend. Okay? I will be your friend outside of Pokemon, outside of this payment and kind of weird, cringy online YouTube space that I frankly can't stand in a lot of ways. I will be your friend in person. We can take care of each other. We can do unselfish things, but you have to understand this world here is transactional. Okay. And some transactions can be good for win-win for both parties, but often if you're not aware that what you're doing is transactional, but you think that they're your friend, or that they don't have some sort of self-interest, or that there isn't some sort of thing going on, most of that is where you become taken advantage of. um and so I just want people to be aware of that. Now, that doesn't mean you should go the other way and be angry at someone for trying to create a business, right? But businesses are not your friends. Businesses provide you a service for value, and that service is very valuable. But so is your money, is of equal value. Your time, your attention is of equal value. It should be a mutually beneficial thing. Um, okay, let's go to the chat a little bit and see my favorite thing. The chat. I can't wait to see what everyone else will say. Hey, um, all right, let's see what we got here. Um, Sorry, just to the hellos. Thank you all for the well wishes. Good to see a lot of your names. I hope you all are doing well. Um, um, Retrospect says, looking back, do you wish you would have placed more confidence in Pikachu's garments? I always wish I would have made more money, but putting going to the casino and playing roulette is not something I wish I did more. Now, if I knew I was going to win at roulette, right? Most people who are making money in Pokemon and who are coming on here and saying how smart they are and how great they are, they're playing roulette. They are playing roulette. Okay. Now, some of them are more savvy than others. Some of them are using more data than others, which definitely increases their odds of winning, of being correct. Okay. But fundamentally, there is so much just roulette playing and gambling going on, disguised as sort of like intellectual, thoughtful investing. Right. And I can't invest in Pokemon because I don't know how. Like, this is one thing that people sometimes hear that and they think, well, Jake, you think you're so smart, you think you can invest in it? No, that's the point. I don't. Right. One of Einstein's famous quotes was that, like, it was something like, intelligence has like a ceiling, but stupidity has no end, or something like that. And sometimes I feel like, yeah, it's like, well, like, we're all intelligent. We all have quite a bit of intelligence, right? Some of us have more intelligence or higher IQs than others. We all have some ability to think critically, right? But we are very limited as human beings, and we're very limited with the amount of information we have and our ability to manipulate and use that information. And there is the most successful investors in the world, like, aren't that, like, they're better at knowing what they don't know than knowing that, it's often what they don't know, and being humble, that has helped them continue to grow, right, and make money year after year. That humility. So I'm basically yelling in the void saying, be more humble, everybody. We all need to be humble. Um, Particularly when you're risking money that's going to be to feed your kids and your family and things like this. I mean, I have lots of anxiety and concern, and I feel like I'm going to make tons of mistakes. I know I'm going to make tons of mistakes, and I worry about how much money I'm putting in this and that all the time. So I walk the walk. I mean, I'm concerned and anxious about all these things, and I'm constantly making these calculations and doing the things I'm doing because of all of this, right? Um, okay. Got to some questions here. All right. Do you own any ace grading cards? I do not. I don't think. I think I might own one, actually. But I talked to Randolph back in the day. He's a very nice guy, so I certainly like would hope that his business. I don't really know much about it, but I would, just as a like sort of personal thing, I would wish him well, and I hope it's going well. Honestly, now that I'm doing Pokemon full time, I'm so busy, like, buying and selling and doing all of that, that I don't even really engage in content anymore, and I'm not as online nearly as online as I used to be, funny enough, when I was actually doing this as a hobby. Um, Pokeslam question, what's your take on the proto cards? Yeah, so I wanted to get into, like, all of the different areas of the hobby more specifically, and I'm certainly happy to talk about prices and specifics. At the top here, it was just a sort of random, more broad kind of conversation about the psychology of the moment, psychology in general. What I felt like is missing from a lot of the videos I watched this morning. Um, so, question: what's your take on the prototype cards? So, all right. So, I will preface this by saying that what do I want to say on this. I believe that they are, from conversations that I've had and from things that I've seen and experienced. Personally, I believe that they are real, that the information that's coming to the West, unless there's lying happening on the other side, I believe in what I'm hearing from the Western side. And I believe that there are only Akabani's, copies, and I believe there's only a certain amount of them. Okay. A specific amount that he has. Okay. Now, could there be other people working for the I think I would say I have two concerns with that. Like, one, is it possible that Akabani or someone involved with the team or anything, could there be more copies than they realize, and they're saying, either because they're not saying the truth or because they just don't know where all of them are. It's always possible, right? That's just a risk you are taking in the collectible space. Some people are super ethical and honest, and some people are not. And people, when there's lots of money at stake, people are more even good people who normally wouldn't do unethical things are more capable of lying, right? And so it's just sort of common sense, I think, right? And I think people there's a lot of anxiety like about it, but in my mind, I'm kind of calm about it, and I just it's common sense. There's some probability or some risk, right? Now, there is some risk in so much more, right? Of there, I could name tons of trophy cards of extra copies and all sorts of things that tend not to get um, the same type of conversations as publicly about, that I've um, felt and thought of for years. So I'll say that. So yeah, it would not surprise me if more of these come out over time. It would also not surprise me if no more come out after the next like few batches, right? The amount that he sort of said that there are. And obviously, I think a lot of resellers and flippers are buying them right now. I think a lot. First of all, there's a ton of them, right? Because like in the beta set alone, there's 151 cards. So even if there are only 10 or 16 or 20 or 100 of that set, however many there end up being, right? And I don't have, right. I only know the public information, 10 or 16 or whatever, somewhere in there. Um, uh, um, what we don't know, right? What was I saying there? Um, and I lost my train of thought. Okay, so what I would say, right, is that uh, those sets are being, I think, flipped and resold a lot by resellers and flippers, and there's a lot of negativity, and there's a lot of them, and it's just going to take a while for those to get more into collectors' hands. I do think if not a lot more of them come out, this is my personal opinion as a collector. This is not an investor. This is not investment advice. I have been buying a lot of them because I really like them as a collector. Now, I'm not buying doubles and triples for investments or for those types of things. I'm buying a lot of my favorite Pokemon. I'm buying the first appearances. I'm buying some of my favorite arts. I like pairing it with the WotC card. For those who don't know what the prototypes are, sorry, I always assume on this channel I never do a good job of like explaining things that are actually useful to people who are not super deep down the rabbit hole. But I think it's too hard to explain. But basically, there's two different types of prototypes right now, or play test cards, and then there's different types of prototypes sort of around the play test cards. And there's questions on their legitimacy, on how many there are going to be if they are legitimate, and then I think the last thing I'll say on a Pokeslam is like how are can they be faked? How easily can they be faked? Right, and that's an issue with anything, with any collectible. How could they be faked? And another question, how they're going to stand the test of time because of the material that they are. I think those are all good questions. I think the opposite side of that is like, I just think they're freaking sick. Like, I love Pokemon history. The fact that that stuff came out and like all of the like people on E4 who were like so much more knowledgeable than me are writing articles about like, oh, I saw this in like Korokoro and like here's the different like the history of it. It for someone who can get bored, right, with the stuff that's currently out there, it's fun to have like new, cool, exciting pieces from that era, from that time period in Pokemon. As a collector, that's just as a collector. Do I think there's investment potential? I think there's investment potential on anything that there is collector potential around. There's long-term investor potential. But I think the narratives that are created around these are going, talking about narrative and how value is created. The narrative is going to be really important to the value. The narrative is so important to the long-term value of collectibles. And so is the narrative going to be these are like some of the coolest, most historic pieces, some of the rarest, most historic pieces of the entire hobby, or is it going to be like, ew, like these things are scammy and we don't know if they're actually real and they're not real cards, and I think when people come out with really strong opinions initially, I always wonder like what are their, do they own some so they're pushing up the price, or do they not own some, or do they not like the people who are making money off of them so they're talking them down, or even more nefariously, were they just not involved in the deals? They're not the ones making money on it. They weren't the ones who introduced it to the market, so are they going to talk negatively about it? Now, I think that you can assume bad things when they're not there, so you have to be careful with that, because like a lot of people are just sharing their opinions and they're not like trying to influence the market one way or another. If anything, they're trying to share their opinions without influencing the market. Um, Again, for me, the cheaper they are, the better until I finish my collection. Then I hope they go up in price so that if I ever decide to resell them, they're worth more, right? Total transparency. I want them cheap until I own them, and then I would hope that they would they would go up a lot in value. I feel that way about anything that I buy. I think most of us do. So retro, pointing out something from earlier, wasn't, well, this went up. So what's next? The same strategy used to pivot to non Pokemon during COVID. So I would say that what I did is I looked at, going back to this conversation we were having in the beginning of chat. I looked at the fundamentals of those hobbies, and and momentum invested, to your point, right? That I think you're about to say next, just momentum investing. The issue with momentum investing is, um, it's so there. Momentum investing is a term that's used that like some people they use the idea of like momentum investing and they turn it into long term investing. And so what they say is like they like um is the momentum investing because you're riding the hype train and because you recognize that the underlying value isn't that great, but that the value is the momentum in and of itself pushing it up? I try and stay away. I definitely stay away from doing that for the most part, unless I'm doing it really, really short term. What I believe I was doing was a combination of it, retro, I would say, which was like value investing, which was like, wow, like these items are extremely undervalued, in my opinion. Their demand, like same thing when I was buying Pokemon in 2018, 2019. Not that I ever knew that it was going to go up, but just I think these things are very undervalued because as a collector, I could own all of them for a very cheap amount, and I think that there are more people who would want these in the world. That type of rationality, right? That is what fundamentally that's what the value of these things are, right? So I think that that was driving quite a bit of it. And then there was also the momentum investor. I'm not saying don't momentum invest at all. I'm just saying I think there's a lot of risk in momentum investing. There's a lot of like people think they're smart investors, but really it's like they're what they're doing is more speculation. And that could be me, right? Like there are plenty of times where I probably thought I was a smart investor and really I was just speculating. And there are many times where I thought something didn't have value where it probably did, right? So me talking confidently about these principles does not mean that I do these principles well all the time. Of course not. We all make constant mistakes in these, right? But I think understanding the principles and the semantics and the terms and understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it is really important. Let's see what else we got. Jimmy, Jake, do you see Sleepy Tyranitar moving like Mumbrion did? Well, right. So what I would say to this type of thing, Ancient, and good to see you after all this time. Good to see your name. Is that like a lot of people are going to make videos on that, and they could say, well, Tyranitar. They could make some fundamental like to Retro's point. Let's do a mixed analysis. Let's do a mixed analysis of momentum investing and value investing and sort of like intrinsic value investing. So let's say, okay, well, the rarity is the exact same, should be the exact same as the Moonbryon or around the same, depending on how much obviously of those sets are printed and the pull rate. But let's say the rarity of that card, the amount of that card that physically exists, the supply is around the same. Let's just say, okay, so they have the same rarity. Okay, so that means they should have the same price on rarity. Okay, that's objective, the rarity part. Okay. Moonbryon versus Tyranitar, who's more popular, right? Who's more popular now versus who's more popular in the future? Has Moonbryon always been so much more popular than Tyranitar? I would say Moonbryon has really had to come up as a Pokemon in the last few years. But is that a permanent come up? Is that a permanent narrative that Moonbryon is the chase, is the way to make money? Right? Or could it shift to other Pokemon and other things, right? It used to just be Charizard, just a set of a Charizard. Then Brilliant Stars came out. That set has done worse than like every other set basically in that whole time period, including Battle Styles. I think Battle Styles has had a bigger like percentage gain, or it's like very similar, right? And that card had the Charizard in it, had the Charizard V in it, right? But for some reason, that Charizard, whatever, because price. Yeah. But okay, but so let's do an evaluation, right? On so we have that, we have this next category, which is the popularity of the Pokemon. We can say what's more popular right now, or what we think is more popular right now. We can't really define that. We don't really know, and we certainly don't know what's going to happen in the future. Okay, so that's sort of a wash. We can't really make a decision off of that. Pull rates, right? Sorry, not pull rates, expected value of the, we could look at the boxes and we can say, well, this box is way more expensive. So in order to pull this card, it's way harder. So it should be more expensive, whatever. But then that's tied to the box. That's a correlation, right? We don't necessarily know what causes what. And if the box started falling, could the card start to fall? Or vice versa, right? Well, what if the Tyranitar box, what if that moves up a lot more than the Evolving Skies box? And then the Tyranitar inside moves up more because people are like, oh, well, look, that box moved up more, And so sometimes it's just my point in illustrating all of that is nobody freaking knows. And like, I know all the price, like not all the price, but I follow the market extremely closely. I literally buy and sell Pokemon every day for a living, all day. I'm engaged in these cards, in the numbers, in the prices. Anyone coming on here saying that with any sort of certainty that they, oh, because this one's undervalued, like, whereas the example I gave before of like the XY card, that is more obviously when you look at sort of the rarity, the Pokemon that are on the card, right? Why is this one so much cheaper than this one? And I would say probably narrative, but how much, I don't know, but will that narrative ever change? I have no idea. And as we can see, narrative is what is driving prices. It's not the other stuff. right? And narratives are easier to create when stuff does have good fundamentals. There's always kernels of truth. There's always things that are true. But that price has the high price is what is driving more price. The fact that people can make money is what's driving price. It's wild. Appreciate the positive comments here. Post-pandemic collectible stock, crypto markets all crash. And a couple years later, we were back to all-time highs yawn. Just the business cycle doesn't have to be the sky's falling. So I think you're misunderstanding sort of what I'm saying in the investment strategy retro. So there are people who make money in every cycle as it goes up and up and up, and then there are people who lose money in every cycle. And it's a a lot of the people who are talking most positively, like, may end up losing the most because of when they're buying and when they're selling, right? So it's a zero-sum game. And the reason that my parents have made so much money on the stock market is because people in our generation are investing in the stock market and because population has exploded. Like, there's a lot of reasons, right? So don't just yawn, like, and say that, like, it's important. And what you do and understanding the cycles and having a sophisticated, nuanced understanding of this is how successful you will be. If you are investing, now if you are flipping and reselling, it's somewhat different. So don't be don't be don't be cynic. I know you hear a lot of this stuff, but don't understand. And I know it can become repetitive, but there's an important nuance and difference in this. Don't misunderstand what people are saying. Yeah, exactly, Shovels. The community is the product. Pokemon in general doesn't have real fundamentals to drive value. Its only value is in its community. So why should it matter if the community values the wrong thing? So I would say that I'm not exactly sure. So I guess I would take this from a few different levels. So I don't think the only value is the community, and I'm not sure what you mean by the community, like your specific friends, the people that you feel are part of your community. Certainly, human interaction and social interaction has a lot of value to most people. There's also a lot of people who have value buying something expensive and then trying to make money on it, on it and hoping it goes up. There are people who find value in flipping and reselling and making money. There's people who find value in just looking at their cards and completing binders and completing collection, and that has nothing to do with other people. The selling and the flipping, but it really has to do with it has nothing to do with like helping other people or connecting with other people. It has to do with your own engagement with the cards and how you choose to engage with the cards. So I would disagree with that part. Although I would say that a lot of the value does come from the friendships and the engagement. And then, so why should it matter if the community values the wrong thing? Um, the wrong thing. So it's not people are not necessarily valuing. I wouldn't say it's right or wrong. I would say that it is, why are they valuing it? Are they valuing it for a reason that will hold up over the course of time, or are they valuing it for a reason that won't? That's how you decide to invest. Now, whether it goes up or down as an ethical thing, this is not food. So I don't have a lot of sympathy, to be honest with you, for people who talk about Pokemon cards like it's food. And I definitely, I mean, people who are obviously, the horrible stuff is when people are like cheating each other and lying each other and attacking each other. Like the unethical stuff that comes from like all the money making is terrible, 100%. But like, there's a ton of other card hobbies you could do that are cheaper. There's a ton of other things to collect that's much cheaper, right? Like there's infinite things to collect in the world. I mean, you could collect rocks on the side of your street if they bring you pleasure. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you want to be doing stuff that other people enjoy doing? Why do you want to be involved in things that are popular? It's all just governed by capitalism and by the market. There's no one evil being or person manipulating everyone to buy everything or not buy everything or whatever, right? But me saying that people are creating narratives that are affecting prices rather than is my take on sort of what's happening. So if you want to say that that's wrong or irrational or whatever, it's wrong if they think that what they're saying is 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 what's the word is investing, right? Is fundamentals investing. It, it's jumping in on narratives and hype and riding them out and hoping you sell at the right time. Um, but there needs to be someone, right? Like all the people who are making a lot of money on a lot of the stuff that they've bought over the last couple of years, including me. Right? I made more money the last couple of years than I did, the previous few years in the hobby. Is because new people and different people came in and were willing to buy the same items at higher prices, and so on and so forth. Listen to Jake in the past. Glad he doesn't make a lot of videos anymore since he has been away off and on and cost me a ton by not buying seal product in 2021. So, if you had momentum invested during those periods and had a belief and in a short-term window and gain and you're selling now, listening to me and not buying, you would have made more money if you hadn't listened to me and if you were selling now. It's obvious. But what I was saying was correct, right? What I was saying is that nobody can predict what's going to happen, right? Including myself. Right? What I was saying is these people and who continue to say the same things to you about investing and that they can invest, right? Me telling you that of course you can make money doing this. You can make money at a casino, right? You choose whether you want to gamble it or not. I think you not putting a lot of money in these things was probably a good decision, even though you would have made money. And this is a concept that seems foreign to people. People say, well, the price went up, so it was a good investment. No, right? No, 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 no. The math behind it, were you correct on the fundamentals, on the analysis, right? That's how you're going to make money over time, right? If you go to the blackjack table and you think your odds of winning are 70-30, that's your analysis. And you play a bunch of hands and you make a lot of money and you bet bigger because you think you're going to win and you have a irrational exuberance about your ability to win and then you make more money. Was that a good investment? Right? Try to understand what I'm saying. Try to think a little deeper. Again, Einstein's quote, there's just no end to sort of the stupidity, like the lack of nuance and critical thinking. I'm trying to help you. I'm talking against my own interests. I'm sorry that you feel like you've lost money because you listened to me. I mean, it's so silly. Like, that's a worrisome statement because really, if you were understanding what I'm saying here, it would help you understand the tools to make money over a very long period of time. Okay, in anything, in any sort of market system, right? Scarcity mindset is dark and will only limit you. Pi has only grown. Collaboration breeds success. Not everything needs to be a competition. So this is like very classic pyramid scheme talk retro that I think you're falling into, where because there's so much success and like during this time, the success can certainly breed a mindset of like, oh, like it's endless wealth and it can all go around everywhere. But it's very important for people. It's very ethical to take care of yourself. Okay. And this is why I put a difference. This is not a dark mindset. And this is not a scarcity mindset. There are finite resources on planet Earth. Like this is a pragmatic, an objective, there's objective physical reality in the world. And there's our interaction with that reality, and there are markets that are created, and there's only so much money, and there's only so much. Now, is there enough to go around if no one is greedy, if no one takes too much? We can have debates about should there be billionaires and should we tax them all the way down? And like we can have reasonable discussions, but all of those discussions are based on the fundamental presence that there there's only so many resources. And if you print endlessly, then it has no value. The only reason anything has value is because it's scarce, is because not everyone can have it. If that feels dark to you, then or to anyone, they're just not comfortable with the reality that they live in the world, which is dangerous because then you can't protect yourself and your family, one, and two, you will unfairly criticize other people when they're just telling you sort of objectively what's going on and saying that, oh, you're a dark person, when in reality they're just talking about what's happening. And I think I'm a like I believe in the soul. So, and I believe in that we're created in the image of God and all sorts of things. So, I think that the fact that money is an objectively scarce resource, or cars or whatever, does not mean that love is, or that other sorts of concepts, or that feelings are, or that friendships need to be that way. I mean, there are other dimensions of life, that don't need to be a zero sum game. But there are some dimensions of life that are, by their very nature, a zero sum game. Um, so I'm sure you've answered this a million times. What do you think is driving the current interest in Pokemon at its core? I have no idea. I think it's great for my business. I hope it continues. I hope that all this stuff continues. I mean, I think that the negative advice, I think, does hurt the hobby in the long run. I think people not giving people realistic expectations. I think people not treating each other well, like, hurts the hobby to some extent in the long run. I think that the messages I'm trying to share here help people and the hobby be more sustainable in the long run. But I also don't think that any of it's going to matter that much one way or another. Like, I don't think the negativity matters that much. I don't think the positivity matters that much. I think people just really like the cards, really like Pokemon, really like friendships they've built, and hopefully the momentum of all of that will continue to push us forward, even if it isn't, centered on money making, but centered on some of the other aspects of the hobby. Good to see you, basic. Can't wait for the narrative shift from evolutions to Akabani's 700th iteration of a promo card. Not exactly sure. I guess positing that Akabani will put out a lot more prototypes, or different prototypes, definitely possible. I think that there's quite a bit of risk on those because we just don't know what the narrative is going to be around them, because we don't know exactly how many there are. If people are here, we all know what prototypes are. I don't like anything I don't own. I did some reading on the late 80s, early 90s comic book. The similarities are actually shocking. Encourage people to simply ask ChatGPT. Yeah, I talk about this a lot, Godly Shot. So, and so my favorite thing, right, is going to card shows and comic book shows and talking to vendors who've been doing this for 40 years. They are much wiser than all of us combined because they have been here and experienced it, right? Not all of them are like, the best at articulate or whatever, but like they have like the amount they've seen, right? And generally the ones that last and succeed, like, have a lot of wisdom to share. The bubble actually lasted quite a while, and people made a lot of money until it collapsed. It collapsed because of oversaturation. Yeah, I mean, and again, what does collapse really mean? A lot of times, like, did it all collapse? Did everyone lose their shirts? Did everything fall? And then how long did it take to recover? Right? It can always be like I think the Pokemon market right now, the fact that it has lasted this bull period has lasted like 5, 6 years, and the momentum has built stronger now than it has been in the past, is a good sign for the very long term of Pokemon. Um, how long it will last, I don't know. And the fact that people, again, thanks for sharing your perspective on the Pro Shake. I was curious about your take and thought they'd be an item here, as am I. Yeah, I mean, I love them, right? I really like them, but I'm taking the financial risk that a lot more come out, and then I could have gotten them for much cheaper. I'm definitely going to buy them at some, I want to own all of them unless they're out of my, like one of all of them, unless they're out of my price range, too high, they go too high, or they turn out to be fake, right? Or and then it'll be like, why? What are the? That's awful, you know. But I mean, that's part of being in this hobby. You and I are in it together. It's like we're people, who we hope that the grading card companies and that the people behind the scenes, and like, of course, I have insider knowledge on the process, on what happened. Like, I've dug as deep as I could, you know um but people can always lie. So, at some point you have to just sort of decide whether someone's lying or not, and whether to trust them or not. Just make that decision. Maybe the real Pokemon were the friends we made along the way. So so this is definitely true because it happens in all markets, Godly Shad. The question, right, is when. Like, if you're trying to make money, the question is when and how much and what. Because if you're not, like, many of the people who are buying and investing right now, who then sell in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, may make a ton of money, right? So, or they may lose a bunch of money. Um, I don't know how to place odds on it, to be honest with you. So, um, they're they're the only ones that are sure about what they're doing, or seem sure. Um, Jake, they can't wrap their minds around it. Price went up. You were wrong. You said might go down. Many brains won't handle that concept. I think that a portion of it, right, is just a lack of financial education and knowledge, and not being able to understand common sense and humility from egoic driven madness. um and then, but a lot of it also, right, is they know, but they're just also trying to drive the prices up. Like, there's some amount that is just like, yes, stop, Drake. Like, always positive narrative. Come on. I just bought a lot of this stuff. Keep it up. A lot of people are silent who did, let me put it this way, and me too. Like, I'm silent a lot because of this, right? Because we don't want to talk against our own interests. That's part of the, so when people, uh it's part of what builds bubbles. Right? It, like, that in and of itself is what, and you can see it in media or anything. Like, go back and watch, like, tech, like the tech bubble or the housing bubble, or right. It's all like these things, and literally technology has fundamentally shifted our lives in so many ways. And some of the companies that came out of the tech bubble in the 2000s, around 2000, like, are the biggest companies in the world right now. So it's not saying that they don't have value. It's understanding the psychology and what people are doing. Like, people are giving tons of money, and every founder is amazing, and it can only go up, and there's enough to go around. And we're going to create a utopia. To Retro's point before, when you start hearing people like talk about community and utopia in sort of like a fake way, where they're not actually creating for like friendships and family is a day-to-day effort and work about putting someone else before yourself. And we don't succeed at it all the time and a lot of the time. And building those types of relationships takes years, time, and work. The feeling of community is often irrational exuberance and part of bubbles, which again, it's blunt honesty, right? But it's meant to be helpful. And you are capable, every person here is capable of love and being loved and connecting but it takes work and effort and building friendships and relationships. I was a therapist for 11 years. I saw people who went from totally giving up on humanity, like, and themselves, and feeling utterly worthless and angry at everyone, and at massive risk to hurt themselves or others, to people who of course they're still human beings, so they still have doubts and down feelings and concerns and worries and still working on things, but to someone who is like balanced, and there's a lot of things I really appreciate, and there's things I want to give back to the world and to other people. I want to make life better for others, right? Like, you don't have to be a cog in creating toxicity. You can be a force for sanity, you know. But it takes effort and work, and none of us succeed at it, right? Like, we all, right? Like, it's not, me saying these things is not succeeding at it. I hope people can understand that. Like, it's constant effort and work, like, that's required, and time and energy, and we only have so much, and only have so much time on the planet, and we only have so much energy. Let's see. Thoughts on MetaZoo prototypes as a hedge on Pokemon prototypes? Jake, from someone who collects mainly Japanese and has been away from the hobby, could you talk a bit about the difference between the Japanese and US markets right now? Sure. Can definitely do that. Hmm. There's so many parts of the market we could talk about. Yeah, so Japanese has been interesting. I forget how long ago the like Japanese promo like mini boom, like Japanese Worlds cards boom was. I can't keep track of time anymore, particularly now that I'm not on YouTube making these videos. I want to say it was like a year ago. Um, as far so that happened. That was interesting and crazy. For English, during that period, English was pretty stagnant. Modern English, not alt arts. Alt arts had a few different. So the Sword and Shield alt arts had a few different peaks and valleys, and are right now mostly, if not all, at an all-time high. I think that there are some like lesser alt arts that are a bit down from maybe they were at one point, or in fact, I know that for sure. But most of your sort of your key high flying ones, the two that pop into my head the first are Moonbryon and Gengar, um, the Gengar V Max. They so like price history, for example, on that Moonbryon. So the Moonbryon, out of the gate, once it settled a bit, was selling for around. See if my memory can serve me. Um, I want to say raw was about like 2 to 400-ish, and people were kind of buying it as it was going up. And then graded PSA 10s are about 5 to 700 mostly. Um, Sort of after that initial kind of hype and cooling period. And at that point, the booster box was going for it hit for a couple weeks. It did hit $95. You could buy them on eBay for $95 a box for Evolving Skies, for those who didn't know that. And then but that was a very short period. It was like a week, 2 weeks. And then it went, and before that it was at 180. It had a reprint, fell from 180 to 92. Then it went up to 140. Then it went up to like 280, 420, came back down to 280. People were trying to sell it to me. I bought a few cases some months ago, and then I flipped them immediately for a profit. I don't invest in it. I just kind of buy below market and sell whatever's hot, at market. Then came back up. I don't know. I think it's 600 and something now, maybe 700. I don't know if it's over 700 yet. Similarly, the Moonbryon and the alt arts have followed a similar trajectory, although the booster box prices actually went up first, a lot of them, before the alt arts started going up. But now if you look at like their overall graphs, like most of them are pretty, like the percentage growth on whether you had invested in the sealed product or invested in the key chase card are about the same. So, so that's the sort of the English side of that era. Of the Scarlet and Violet era, you had very little relative to now. I mean, there was still a lot of interest and engagement, but relatively low interest, very much compared to now, in most of the Scarlet and Violet sets outside of like 151. A lot of people were very engaged in that set. That set sold really well, was doing very well. Then starting, gosh, how long ago was it now? Time is so hard to, 6 months, 8 months? I don't know. We started seeing some of the sets, particularly some of the harder sets that were like Paldea Evolved, like just seemed harder to get like booster boxes of that set. We saw those sets go up to like 130. Those were some of the first ones to kind of peak up. And now I'm not sure. I think a lot of them are like 140, 150, probably higher, some of them. And I know a number of like the chase cards from those sets have doubled, tripled. You look at I just recently, sold some of those gold cards from the Giratina, from what's it called, Crown Zenith, and those went crazy high. So that's sort of like the price history and where we're at in. So I would say most popular Pokemon chase cards, kind of across the board, a lot of them in the ultra modern have like doubled, tripled, particularly like your 151 cards from that Crown Zenith, your alt arts from Scarlet and Violet. Then you have like promos, certain promos like the Van Gogh promo, some other Pikachu promos that I've noticed have gone up a lot that are less talked about. Although I guess some of those are Japanese, going to the Japanese. So that's the English side. Japanese side, I don't know. I don't sell and follow and not as engaged in the Japanese side of the Sword and Shield. So someone else can tell you that, like the price movements over time. I know that at one point they were more expensive, like quite a bit more expensive. And particularly when you went back to like the original alt arts from like the team up, the Sun and Moon era. And then there was like a crossover point where like the English started to become more value than the Japanese. And I would talk to a lot of people who were like more into Japanese, and they were like, oh my gosh, like it'll come back, like whatever, everyone believes in what they have, and you always hear from the people who are right. Right. Lucky. Let's see what else. As far as like the booster box prices and things like that, I don't even know. Everything is moving so fast. People in the chat, I'm sure, can tell you like how much like terrestrial is right now. I think like I was buying them like for 55, 60, then 65, then 75, then I think like 80, 90. I sold some like at 100. I think then I was selling them a little bit lower. I sold a bunch at like, I think I sold some initial stuff at like 50, 55. So it's been all over those price ranges. I'm not sure what it is exactly right now. 151, kind of 50 to $100 for the most part I've seen. Again, I don't know what it is right this second. It could be outside that range, but that's mostly what I've seen in the last few months. Um, yeah, a lot of interest, a lot of engagement. Generally on the streaming side of things, like when I'm selling to streamers or streaming like through people I stream through. Um, more they like English better generally still. People want the English. I think the modern English sets in particular, there's just so much hype right now around like from Surging Sparks kind of onwards. This period it reminds me a lot of Vivid Voltage. Surging Sparks, and it's funny because it's Pikachu too. It's a very similar like that doesn't mean it's gonna be the same, right? Here's another narrative. Oh, it's this happened before, so it'll happen again, right? Who knows? But it's ironic or funny that there's a Surging Sparks Pikachu reminds me a lot of Vivid Voltage, kind of a set that like I don't know, whatever. I don't think that set's gonna stand the test of time particularly well, probably because they'll probably come out with newer, cooler looking cards. But again, it's that's speculation, right? Me saying that I think my opinion on that has the same validity as every other YouTuber who comes on here and says, I think it's a really good set. 50-50, it's like the same validity. Um, so, yeah. Uh, yeah. So I guess that's what I would say. English side like super super crazy. Japanese side doing well, chugging along well. Interest in mostly like the key sets. I don't really like showing what's in my collection because I like just kind of there's something nice about the privacy. I don't like being an influencer. I don't like people knowing who I am that much outside of like my friends. I get more negativity than positivity, and also like negativity affects me more than positivity. So it's better for me to like avoid negativity than like hearing people say, "Oh, so cool," this or that, versus like, "Oh, like here's another rich person showing like the value." Like it's just like, dude, they're just physical things. Like you and I can be friends. I don't care what your net worth is. You shouldn't care what mine is. Like, do you like the character of the person? Like, I just hate that shit. So, Pokemon Pocket game on mobile. Yeah, definitely possible. I have had people come to me at my table asking me like, "Do you have any of like those any of the cards from that game?" So to your point, like, um, those people are obviously brand new and are have come from playing that likely. Let's see. All right, might jump to the bottom now. If anyone has any questions or anything they want me to talk about, feel free. Um, Jake, I'm up 200% in near every single thing I own. What should I do? Is sale when now or later? We are talking six figures. So first of all, congrats. That's great. I have no idea what you should do. Um, I can only tell you what I do and why I do what I do, and what I think I'm capable of and what I think I'm not capable of. So, I don't know what your financial situation is. So, like, if I was your financial advisor, I would need to know specifically what your financial situation is, how much money you have in this versus other things, how much knowledge and engagement you have in this, how much selling experience do you have, how quickly can you sell it, what's how clued into the market are you, right? It's all the nuance. It's the richness and the value comes from all of those questions. The reason that people online don't give financial shouldn't give financial like advice is because we don't know your specific situation enough. Okay. Um, what I would say, generally speaking, is that um, the items that have gone up a large amount recently, um, they easily could double again, given the amount of hype and energy and movement, in my opinion. I could see a scenario where they double, triple again. I could also see scenarios where they go down 50%, 15, 20, 30%. You have to decide, and the answer is you just don't know. And this is why this stuff really isn't is a speculation and a gamble. You and I both don't know, cool cards, right? And the people online that you're talking to, they also don't know. And that's what's hard. So it's kind of like, well, we all don't know, right? Um, but we know that bubbles happen, and we understand the psychology of markets because we've seen it over and over and over again. So we know that these things happen. Where are we in that cycle? Do I want to ride this out more? Do I want to sell and take some profit now? Do I want to take part of the profit now? You know, how well do you think these sets will hold up in the very, very long term? If you want to think about long term investing, you could say, well, I think the Pokemon market long term will be okay, even if in the short term there's lots of, the next 5 to 10 years, there's lots of blips, or next 15 years. But in the long, long, long term, I think it'll do great. Well, what sets do I think will stand the test of time? I think those conversations, there's value in those. There's some value in those conversations. I just think it's so hard to predict what the narrative is going to be in 20 years. We didn't Again, everyone who's so confident now were the people saying that Evolutions and Hidden Fates were the two greatest sets of all time now. And now the singles from Evolutions are just are worth extremely little right now, even during this insane boom. Imagine what they'd be worth in a non-boom, right? And then Hidden Fates has basically held its value despite this insane boom, which is an incredible underperformance over everything else in the market, right? But putting that aside, it's just two examples of where you would have been wrong. It just means that why Sword and Shield? Why did Sword and Shield do well, but not Hidden Fates and Evolutions? What did those not continue? There is no reason, in my opinion, because they look better. Well, maybe the next cards will look better. It's very it's um it's far too big of a market. There are far too many narratives. There's far too much going on to know. And so what I would say to you, this is why when people say, "Oh, Jake, I listened to you and I didn't buy because I listened to you," I was like, "Well, did I tell you like that you couldn't make money? No, I told you the exact opposite. I told you that it could have doubled, that it could triple. I told you that things that go up really fast are more likely to continue to go up really fast or fall really fast. Volatility creates more volatility. That's what I know. Where we're at in those things, I don't know. So what I tend to do, I tend to sell large portions of my position as I position. I tend to sell large portions of what I tend to buy a lot during these really hot periods. I'm buying a lot right out of the gate of newest sets, and I'm selling it. I'm selling quite a bit right away for just like a $5, $10 profit. Then I'm selling another big tranche when it gets to like a little bit higher, and then I sell another big tranche when it gets even higher, and then eventually I sell out of it. And when I sell out of it, I'm extremely happy because I made a lot of money. And there's plenty of people right now who are buying those boxes. I finally sold out of Evolving Skies at I think 400, in the 400s, I think, is where I finally sold out of like my last Evolving Skies. I bought a bunch of cases in 95, and then I finally sold out of all my Evolving Skies at that. Now, could I have held, and could I now be selling it for 800 or whatever it is, 700? Of course. But do I feel badly about that? Obviously not. I feel so lucky that I got lucky to make the amount of money that I made on that. Like you are lucky that you've made the amount of money that you've made on this so far. Now, you definitely could press that luck. It's fun pressing luck. And there's a very reasonable, sizable chance that things will continue to go up in this environment until they don't. It's why making content like this, it's why I don't really want to make videos anymore. It's like I just don't have that much to say. I don't know. I know the prices pretty well. I know the price history. I know the movements. I can quote you the prices. I can quote you the data that other channels are going to quote you. It's just what to do with that. What to do with that data. Pixel Katana, Jake, do you use any signal or rule of thumb for determining value when to sell? No, I think that there's nothing firm, right? So, um, and so much of it also has to do with like everything else I'm doing at the time and where all of my money is at the time, right? So like if I have a lot of money in modern at the moment or sealed product, so much that I can't really sell all of it right away because it's taking me time to sell, and I don't have a lot of like really cool vintage stuff that I want to also be constantly selling. I will sell more of my modern more aggressively, right? To rebalance my inventory. And vice versa is the true, right? If I have a lot more vintage and I'm struggling to get modern in stock, I may raise my prices a bit, to sell it a bit slower into sort of the movement and the hype. Now, is that the optimum way to make money? Of course not, right? But it is the optimum human way to make decisions, in my opinion, and it's the best a human being can do. The optimum way would be to know the future. The optimum way would be that you could make money if you have 100 to 1 shot of making $1 and you have to bet $1,000, but you knew you were going to win, you could make that bet a million times and become a millionaire, right? It's like the skill in investing is to know how likely you are to be correct. And the less likely you are to be correct, and the less likely you are to know what's going to happen, the more I would caution you from using a terminology like investing, and the more I would move your terminology to speculating or gambling, which is fun. It's okay to let yourself speculate and gamble on Pokemon. Like, if you're working hard and you're making money, like so many people are speculating and gambling on Pokemon and having fun. And I say good for them. In fact, most of these channels that are telling you to invest in Pokemon are probably just not putting that much money in, and they're just kind of gambling and enjoying it and speculating and enjoying the ride. And probably most of the money they put in is from their viewers watching and from the ad revenue they get. And so it's kind of just like free money and they're having fun. So just understand they're not bad people. Just understand like that's what's happening. That's what is actually happening right now. And so make decisions off of that. I will never sell anything at exactly the right time, you know. So if I could live 500 years more, like these items could be worth a lot more. That would be a better time to sell. You know what I mean? Like it's just not it's not a thing. But if you want to have like what we do, like what Dan and I try to do, we in our Patreon and other places, we try to talk through why we make the business decisions we made. But it has to do with a lot of things. It has to do and we're wrong a lot, right? We're wrong a lot. But overall, we've been very right in terms of the decisions we make every day. And what that means is there's nothing intelligent about it. And I'm not trying to predict the market. I haven't been right about predicting market. What I've been right about is buying things at 60% and selling them at 100 or 120%, learning how to grade and make money on flipping and reselling, right? That's what we've been right about. Have we been right about predicting price movements? No. Like there's all sorts of price movements, but we never have claimed to be able to do that, or that you should listen to anyone who's saying that. This is the fundamental difference. Now, in the very, very long term, we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I think the things that will be most investable are the rarer things, the things that have more historic value and importance to the hobby. And I guess it's just kind of I feel like it's a weird debate I'm having with people where it's like, no, I think things that have more supply and things that are less important to the hobby are going to be more valuable. What? That doesn't make any sense, right? Things that have less supply and more demand should be the most valuable, theoretically. That's just I'm just saying things that anyone should be like, well, obviously, Jake, why are we even having this conversation or debate? Yeah, that's what drove me crazy for years is yeah, so I mean, you can look up online right now, like look up how much debt this country has, obviously, but then like the country itself, but then the citizens have, right? Do you think generative AI could be a risk to trading card games? Once we live in a sea of AI generated images, video games, it's these are things that are so outside my ability to predict. It just goes to the point why this stuff is so risky to invest in because there are so many. We have no idea. Like everyone is just like price has gone up now and everything is more expensive now. So in 20 years it'll all be more expensive again. Well, what if no one's interested in this stuff anymore because we're all living in virtual realities and NFTs are the thing and crypto. I right like it can sound stupid, but like it could be like there's some probability of that. I don't I think it's why insiders who invest because they have more knowledge than other people. They know the fundamentals, right? They know the fundamentals. They know the deep fundamentals of the crypto space or the deep fundamentals of the NFT space. Like if that stuff ever becomes a thing and sustains, well, it's a thing, but sustains itself over you know decades and decades and decades and decades, it's a zero sum game, right? So there'll be winners and losers, but the winners will be the ones with the inside information who did the value investing and who understood the value, not the ones who chased the gains. And Cool Carts is now evolving to 1,200. I didn't even know that. Yeah, I just looked like a week ago and it was like 800, right? And so I sold it at 400. So I made a lot of money buying a bunch of that box at $95 and flipping it at $400, right? But if I had bought it at, if I had kept it, oh my gosh, I would have 12x my money. It's like, yeah, if I had gone to the casino and put all my money on red, you know, instead of working, why do I work? I should just go to the casino and put all my money and win every time. Like, it's and don't let these people like fool you into thinking that you're stupid. Like this guy, like I was kind of rude to this guy because he was quite rude to me. But this guy came on earlier and asked like, I lost a lot of money because I listened to you, Jake. You know, and what I would say to this person is like, I feel badly that you are. Oh, now I lost my train of thought. Shoot, I was gonna make I think what was gonna be a helpful point. Um, Shoot. Um, no, I can't remember. Let's see if I can get there. Um, oh yeah, I think this guy has been made to feel badly by a lot of these YouTubers who are bragging about how much money they've made. Oh, I've made so much money. Look at all this money I made. Look at how smart I am and how much I can predict that it came up red in the wheel that I spun. And then it makes that person feel bad, and then they attack me who gave them great advice, like great, just standard advice, right? And because that person is jealous of these bullshitters, frankly, you know, and I don't even think the bullshitters realize they're bullshitting in most cases, and they're not even realizing it, and they're not humble enough to admit it, and the people who are watching them are not humble enough to admit it, and it's a vicious cycle. Um, and when you call it out like I do, you're going to get a lot of backlash because we're talking about the majority of the people in this space fit into the categories I'm talking about right now. There's no money to be made. I can tell you that much, and no friends to be made in my messages. I don't have good incentives to do this. um, I would like to get a bubble Mew, but I'm afraid on the one side that it will crash, and on the other side, if I wait, with the buy that it'll be more expensive. What do you think long term? I think that, similar to my other question, my other answers, right? Like, I have no idea. Um, in the very, very long term of the hobby, we're talking 20, 30, 40 years. We're not talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years now. We're talking 20, 30, 40 years. Do you think that bubble Mew will be you think there'll be more demand for it or less demand for it? You think it'll be more relevant or less relevant? So here's the first question I would ask you, right, D-Spin, is like, how long are you willing to wait? Because if you want the card within the next year or two, maybe you should just buy it now, because it could easily double or triple again given the heat right now, or it could easily have. I don't know, right? And that's just the risk. But if you're talking like long-term investing, and if you have the patience to wait, that's the question I would be asking, and you need to answer that question. I can tell you my beliefs. My beliefs is probably not, because there's going to be so many cards, and I'm not sure exactly why that specific card would stand the test of time when there's hundreds of thousands of other really cool cards and other cool Mews. But maybe that Mew is the special Mew, or maybe the hobby gets so large that everything from these time periods goes up. Like, right, in the long run. But you have to understand, in that long run, there's going to be, hopefully, hundreds of new sets. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new sets. Thousands, tens of thousands of new chase cards, and then hundreds of thousands of copies of each of those chase cards. Think about the amount of supply that's going to compete with that Mew, right? And this is why comic books and sports cards in the 80s and 90s are largely have little to no value, versus the serialized stuff now, the stuff that's like extremely rare, because they're only printing a tiny bit, and has a historical significance because it's the rookie card or the first appearance, and will always be the rookie card or first appearance. There's also a ton of speculation and hype and probably bubbles and that stuff too. And whereas cards on the vintage, and this is why people say, well, Jake believes in only investing in vintage. I don't believe in investing in any of these things. But if I was going to be investing in something for a very long time and not think about it and not worry about it and just put it away forever, I think it's common sense to say I'd want to invest in the thing that I think will have the least supply and the most demand. And the reason I don't think this stuff is investable is because I think it's really hard to guess that correctly. So I'm not saying that these vintage cards in my collection, I mean, I have lots of modern cards too. I have lots of boxes, right? I like to collect. I enjoy it. It's fun. I am not saying, like, I think there's some things in my collection that are more likely to stand the test of time than others. But in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, no idea what they're going to do. No idea. So what I can say is, don't spend more than you can afford to lose, probably. And don't get yourself in a situation where you've spent so much on credit cards and now the market has come down and you are crushed by it. But if you can afford this card now and you want it now, because you also have to think, D-Spine, right? Like, money is that the main goal here? Or is the main goal here to have the card and enjoy your life and move on? Buying something, like going out to dinner, you have an experience and you spend a bunch of money for it. I've gone out to an expensive dinner, right, where I spent a lot of money, or an inexpensive dinner where I spent, still some hard-earned money, right? I spent the money for the experience. Are you spending the money for the experience? Then buy it, because the longer you have it, maybe the more you can enjoy it, and then you'll stop thinking and worrying about it. But it's not. But you didn't make an investment, which is okay. You can buy, believe it or not, you heard it here first. You can buy Pokemon cards for reasons other than investment. You can buy them because you like them, and it's worth it to you, and it's okay if it goes down, because obviously you'd rather buy it later if it went down, but because you don't know, it's worth it to buy it. Just know that you are not stupid. You are not foolish. Like, this is what drives me insane. Like, that you are not foolish because you don't know what's going to happen and you're not sure exactly what to do. You're actually smart. That's an intelligent thought. Do you have any clue why Trilling Rain has gone up this much? That one feels like it came completely out of nowhere. You know, I mean, to me, it doesn't. To me, like just personally, like it feels like it's just gone up and has been kind of connected to sort of the Sword and Shield kind of alt art boom. But I haven't looked at it recently. Yeah, I mean, I know that Battle Styles was definitely the one that has always been kind of lagging quite a bit behind, and the Chilling Rain, was doing quite a bit better. Eventually, your turns have to diminish, right? Yeah. So this is just the concept of that. If there that that there's not an unlimited supply, and that also the more money can be made, the more people will try to make that money, and thus naturally there will be more competition. And with more competition, people will make less money, and then people will leave. And then with less competition, people will make more money, and more people will come back, and blah 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 blah. And so the market continues to cycle. That's natural parts of the market. That's just math. That's the math part of the market. Then there's the psychological part of the market, which is our feelings and how feelings drive markets. And feelings drive markets so much, and so much money is made and lost on the feelings sides of markets. And that those are the things that I try to talk a lot about on my channel. Um, and do you see us getting there soon? I don't know. That's the $1,000,000 question. Someone asked me this in Patreon, like, Jake, how much longer? I'm thinking of starting a business. How much longer? Like, right? You're asking the good questions. It's why this is so risky. And the answer that I give them is, well, past things we've seen some bubbles last 10, bull periods, whatever we want to call it, bubbly periods last 10, 12 years. We've seen, in other hobbies. Could be that, could be longer. Maybe things won't go down, and a lot of these prices will just establish a new normal, and then they'll slowly start going up again. Maybe we'll see something different. Maybe they won't retrace a huge amount this time. Gambling. Where do you want to place your bet? Surging Sparks has better chases than Vivid, I think. So I would argue that Surging Sparks has way worse chases relative to the other chases that are available now. So when Vivid Voltage came out, the excitement over Vivid Voltage, I think, was actually greater. Like, people loved the Amazing Rares, which no one ever talks about, because they were so easy to pull. And the Rainbow Pikachu was selling for, I think it was like, at the time, I think it was like $500-600, and that box went to $200 right out of the gate, similar to Surging Sparks. But at the time, a box going to $200 at that time, in that amount of time, was way crazier than it is now. So, it's right now, if we look at Surging Sparks and people say, well, Surging Sparks is definitely, like, it's because people think Vivid Voltage is terrible now. But in the past, they thought it was good, right? Things are only good relative to other things in many cases. It's like, well, right, you only have so much money, and there are a bunch of sets that you could buy. Well, all the sets are competing with each other to get your money. So which set are you going to put your money into? So every time they come out with new sets, there's just more stuff that's competing with the other stuff. People talk about, well, sealed booster boxes, there's always less of them, right? Because we open one up and now there's one less, and so they'll always go up in value. But they're always printing new booster boxes of new sets. How do those relate? Do those compete too for the same money? Or are those unrelated somehow? Right? I mean, these are sort of like people have a narrative. They're like, well, price has gone up, so let me explain this narrative, and let me create a personality and a character around this narrative, and let me just shovel this shit into people's faces and pretend that I know what I'm talking about. And then what happens is that if it goes up, it's like, take credit, amazing, keep doing it, keep building, keep creating a narrative out of it, these narratives can last decade, decade plus. Maybe they could last forever. And forever, then does it even matter anymore? No. Well, in that case, it wouldn't matter, right? I get asked this question sometimes. I get, well, Jake, let's say that you're right that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but if everyone thinks it equals 5 forever, does like what does it matter that 2 plus 2 equals 4 in the market? You're absolutely right. It no longer matters because like if no one ever agrees with you or comes to that or values things in that way or the same way that you're valuing things, then um, then it will never get there. And so there's always that risk. But the issue is that like the arguments that are being made don't even stand up against like, well, but what about new booster box sets are coming out? When's the cutoff point of when this modern is always going to be relevant, but the next modern isn't? You know. Anyway. Um, yeah, sorry. I know I'm always way behind in chat, so I know some people are posting their questions multiple times, and then I'm finally getting to it. D, I would wait, but then again, what is life? This is related to the mute question. You can wait and never do things, or you can do things. But financially speaking, I wait for bubble mute to settle. Yeah, I mean that's one man's opinion. You know, I haven't been watching that card. Like to be honest with you, like the people who do momentum investing on a serious level have degrees in calculus, and they do the rate of change. So the rate, and they look for patterns in markets to see like, okay, well, when the velocity of the speed of sales is this much and the rate of change is this much, it means that it's like near the high because we've seen that mathematical pattern happen again and again and again. So the psychological, like the concepts I'm talking about here, but there are people who try and like model that pattern. I don't know how successful it is. Some people claim it's extremely successful. I think some people use these tools and like lose their shirt because it's too narrowly focused. It works with data that may become irrelevant. So for example, like the data of like let's say there were a bunch of companies like in the 80s and 90s, right? And the data that told us what those were going to do, once like some of these tech companies came out that were so revolutionary and totally changed the industry, it totally shifted what data was relevant and what wasn't relevant. Just like someone asked a question before, like what if our lives become more virtual and we stop collecting physical things, we stop collecting cards? The data does not capture that at all. And so you could look at the velocity, the rate of change or whatever. It's not going to capture the pandemic. It's not going to capture stimulus checks. It's not going to capture anomalies that happen all the time. Anomalies that happen all the time. That's ironic, but different anomalies. Appreciate that, John. Yeah, just like, I have to take care of myself a bit. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of negativity and backlash from this video. So, I try to stay off social media as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, so this is an interesting question. I've seen some videos. I actually saw Rusty, who's someone I've always really liked personally in the hobby, make a video recently talking about this type of subject of like, because so years ago I was on a stream with what's her name? Oh gosh, I can't remember her name right now. Frosted Caribou. I don't know if she's still making content, but she was a Pokemon YouTuber back then, and we had a conversation about like people can't get product. Like, whose fault is that? Like that anger, right? And I heard, I haven't seen it, but I heard like Nick Pokerev made a video about it, and very a similar type of video, and then and Rusty responded with sort of his take. And I think I used to be a much more bleeding heart. I think I've become more over time. This is something that has changed about me, for better or for worse. I think when earlier on, I was more concerned with like protecting my customers and protecting people. And over time, it became like too hard to try to do that, and too inevitable. And frankly, like the people who like probably needed to hear the message the most were the ones who were the most turned off by the message, right? So it became sort of like, I'm just going to like say what I think, treat people well, and try to treat people well. Obviously, I don't, we don't succeed in that, but try to treat people well. Um, and and run a business, and the goal of my business is to make money, and I'm not lying or cheating or pretending my products are something else, but I'm just sort of selling them at whatever the market is. And I don't feel badly about it like I used to. There was a time when I used to feel it. So I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong by that. It's just an interesting point. I think over time, sometimes for better or worse, you sort of realize that like you can't change that much, and so it's better to focus on things that you kind of can change and focus on. Um, yeah. Um, so like ideas like this are interesting, right? Like says a $140 to $200 box is a better chance to gain than an $800 box. So mathematically, right, the market cap, or the amount of money that it would take for a $100 box to go to $200 versus an $800 box to go to $1,600, right? You're making the same return on your money, but in order for it to move that much, with keeping the supply side the same with both items, right? You're going to need what, eight times as much, in order for that to double, eight times the market cap, massively more dollars. Now the reverse side of this, fat belly, right, is that that's true, yes, but what's actually driving price movement? Some of the items that have moved the most have been $800 or $1,000, or there were items during the vintage boom that were $20,000 that went up to like $250,000. That were some of the biggest winners. So it's a very smart point, and it's absolutely important that, and this is like, people should go back. Like, if you want crash courses on all these things, like go back to like my like early videos on talking about, like, I made like, now I just do these like lazy lives where I don't prepare anything. But in the past, I actually made like some good videos that, of course, only have like 1,000 views or 2,000 views or whatever, where I was going through sort of how, like, the importance of understanding who your customer is and the price points in which they buy stuff at. So are most of your customers buying things from $50 to $100? Are most of your customers buying things from 100 to 200? Are most of your customers buying things from 400 to 800? Are most of them buying things from 1,000 to 20,000? And then what is the psychology of your customer at these different levels is important, right? Because the psychology of someone buying $20,000 items or $100,000 items is likely to be, not necessarily, but is likely to be potentially vastly different, right? There are some super high-end collectors, right, who they want the very best of the best, and they're willing to pay hundreds of thousands of times more for an item that is slightly better, which is why like PSA 10s could get such a premium. Or you see like look at the sports card market at Honus Wagner's. Like the difference between like a PSA 5 and a PSA 8 Honus Wagner, or CGC 4 and a CGC 6, Honus Wagner. I mean, we could be talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars difference. And the reason, likely, again, this is a theory, it could be wrong, but probably a lot of those buyers who are buying it, uh, are um, uh, are so wealthy that a lot of it just becomes they have the money to sort of get the best of the best, and they want that chase and they want that dopamine hit and excitement. And what gets them the biggest dopamine hit is buying like the best of the best and only that thing. And the money is not that valuable to them. Like $1 million to most of us would be extremely tangibly valuable in terms of like the way that it could change our lives. Like what would you be doing differently if you had $1 million? If you gave $1 million to someone who has $1 billion, they wouldn't notice. They make that amount of money every single day. Make or lose that money every amount of money every hour. So you have to understand that people's relationship to the money they're spending is going to be very different. People's relationship to the money that they're spending on a $100 box versus a $600 box. Who's buying the $600 boxes? Who's buying the $800? Who's buying the $1,600 versus who's buying the $100? Right? If the market is filled with mostly people ripping for fun, what are the most fun products to open, and what's the most fun price point to open? Or are people looking for investment return? And then, well, it's hard, Fat Belly Collects, to fill up. If you fill up a warehouse with $100 boxes versus having like two $30,000 boxes that take up almost no room, it's way nicer to just have two small items than to have lots and lots of bulky items that are only 40, 50 bucks, 80 bucks, 100 bucks, right? These are all the backside of the backside of what's it called? The backside of these businesses. And people who are doing a lot of business, those are the questions they're asking themselves on a daily basis. Is my inventory matching my customer demand? Am I serving my customers? Are there customers who are underserved? Right. This is the stuff you don't hear from the investment talk because they're not running businesses. The business talk is more, are my customers well served? Who are my customers? What do they want from me? Why are they buying from me? Am I providing it? Can I provide more of it? Can I build out my customer base? Can I build a moat in my business to protect myself and protect my business from other businesses that could take my customer base, right? Those are the types of things. Chef. I price well. That's not fair. No, you're great. No, that's a really funny comment. Question about just like E series cards. I don't know. We can take a look. I saw the Charizard, the Lugia, some of the crystal cards like double to almost double up in price from their lows a few years back. It's kind of been slow, but I'm kind of curious. Let's see. I don't know like which card you'd be interested, but let's just pick like a popular holo. How about the Gengar Skyridge PSA 10 holo? Curious. We'll look up one. So let's see. So on October 2024, one sold Buy It Now for about 7,000, and in 3 months, one now went into auction above 12,000. And then I think back then they were auctioning around one auction for about $3,700. About, let's see how long ago that was. So in 2023, one auctioned for $3,840, and the latest one just auctioned for 12,100. So that's more than a triple time increase on that, which is massive. So like again, you could never follow all these things. I just picked a random card, but like and then there are other vintage cards I know I've looked at that like haven't moved that much, where because I have been buying these things for a long time. So it's all crazy and random. But people have to say something. They have to come on here and say something, right? So I do have a Patreon thing to get ready for later today. I have my office hours. So I'm gonna run to that shortly. Any last minute questions or comments or anything? Um, I know the way that I package my message is very can be is very can be like condescending, and I apologize for my personality and the way that I can come across at times to those who disagree with me. Um, it sort of is what it is. It's unintentional. It comes from like passion and caring about trying to be helpful to people in the moment. So, any last minute questions or anything? Hey, unit. Good to see you. I'm actually just finishing up. Yeah, I mean, obviously like if people enjoy it, like it'll push me to like want to make more videos, but I'm just not. I just don't want to do it unless I enjoy it going forward. I'm glad you enjoy it, though, still after all these years. That it's like still fun to kind of hang out, and I'm humbled by whatever the saying is. Like it's I'm surprised that people enjoy it. It feel it's nice. So hey Jake, how's the Rainbow Rare investment going? Let's see what Rainbow Rares are doing right now. I have no idea. I haven't looked up my Rainbow Rare collection. Let's see. I don't know. Like, have Rainbow Rares moved in price at all? I honestly don't sell that many of them because I'm not able to buy that many. Like, not many come through the shop. I'm just curious. Let's see. Let's look up let's take like the Lugia from Lost Thunder. I feel like is a good one because it's like no one ever talks about that card, but it's Lugia and it's from like a medium set, like a middle, like a fairly popular set. It's a popular card. Let's see. We'll take a look together. So there are no sales. Huh, that's interesting. There really aren't that many sales. I only see 2 sales here, and they're both for the same price, but they're both from October 2024 and December. So there's no time difference. Let me see if I can find some other data looking other places. I really can't remember. I feel like 400 doesn't seem like much higher or anything. I feel like that card is maybe like I know it was 200 at one point, but then I think it went up to like 300-400. But I will double check. But that doesn't seem like way higher like the Gengar. Lost Thunder. So it looks like they are. So it looks like the bottom of that market of that rainbow of like that card was around like 350, and that was in 2023. During like earlier on, that card got up to $1,600 at the height, the very, very high in 2021. It came all the way down to 300 and 300-ish, 340, and now it's at 480. So, that's a card that as an investment would have been a terrible investment. But at the time, that card was Lugia and Rainbow Rares were the most popular cards, in the hobby at that time. So anyway, it just shows that like that one could have been the one at 4x, and some of the other stuff that's like $5,000 now, and like that's a card, for example, that is like a pop. There's 456 tens of that card. And Lost Thunder, I imagine the Lost Thunder booster boxes are really expensive. Yeah. So Lost Thunder boxes are like around $700. You know, so be very expensive to pull that card. You know, but then you get into sort of that relativity game, you know, of like, well, should be more expensive because these other things are more expensive. Well, it's like, I don't know, maybe they're all too expensive. You know, who knows? It's all speculation. You and I are speculating, and I speculate. I gamble. I'm speculating and gambling along with the rest of people. So it's not. I'm not saying that I'm above speculating or gambling. I just don't say that I'm investing in a serious way or that you should listen to me or do what I'm doing. You know, so at best, like that rainbow card's up like 20% from the low, but it went down from like 1600 to, what I say, 350 or something, massive fall. So, Rainbow Jim, who like definitely follows vintage more than I do, like the price changes, says that E series, from my personal recent experience, when mostly the commons and comments removed a lot. Interesting. While PSA 9 graded didn't move that much. Yeah. So I mean, tens versus nines. Who's buying it? Who's the buyer pool? Has Gengar become more popular? Does the VMAX Gengar, do the modern like Gengar collectors now wanting the vintage Gengars? Does that card going up way more than some of the lesser ones? The only thing we know is that it's always changing, and my guess is that in 3 to 5 years from now there will be new narratives, and there'll be new YouTubers and people telling you about them. So okay. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Let me know what you guys think. If you have, something that you disagree with, if you could please say it in a polite way. In the comments, I will, if it's polite, I will consider answering it politely. What else? If you want to support Dan and I on Patreon, and you think that we and our sort of business experience in the space could be of value to you to hear more about it, we do presentations monthly. We do weekly office hours, we call them, where people can just kind of come in and ask us questions. Dan, if you wouldn't mind just posting I know I see you're here posting just the Patreon link. I didn't post it to this video because I don't do stuff like that, but definitely appreciate, for all those years, everyone. I think our Patreon's like 3-4 years old or something, and we've had people who have been our Patreon members the entire time and have supported us the entire time. $10 a month. That money helps our businesses grow. It's highly appreciated, and let us know what we can do to make it worth it for you to spend that $10. If you ever have any comments or things you want us to do differently, let us know. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Later.